On a cold January night in 2023, federal volunteers fanned out under bridges, along riverbanks, and behind strip mall dumpsters. By sunrise, they logged 653,104 names, the largest homeless count ever recorded in the United States, and a jump the size of an entire mid-sized city in just 12 months. The numbers look sterile on paper, but for the people sleeping on steel grates or cramming into shelter mats, they mark a tipping point. The moment America's homelessness crisis broke every previous record. Stay with me, because the raw statistics aren't the craziest part. The policy twists, billion-dollar spending sprees, and courtroom showdowns that followed are where the real shock lies. Ask any housing advocate why 2023 exploded, and you'll hear three words: rent, relief, and race. Rents hit an all-time high, COVID-era aid vanished, and Black and Latino families, already paying up to half their income on housing, took the hardest hit. AP News Hoodie's own data shows family homelessness spiking 16% for the first time in a decade, while major cities in 2024 reported a small dip in unsheltered people even as suburbs and small towns set new highs. In other words, the encampments didn't disappear, they migrated. And with an 18% national jump in 2024 to roughly 770,000 unhoused, the crisis is accelerating, not easing. Yet those national averages hide brutal local extremes. In California, 2/3 of unhoused people sleep outside. In Massachusetts, fewer than 1 in 15 do. The gap sets the stage for a coast-to-coast tug-of-war over what solving homelessness even means. But California's gamble would soon test that definition. If homelessness had a capital, it would be California. 1 in 3 unsheltered Americans huddles somewhere beneath its palm trees, and 67% of the state's homeless residents lack any shelter at all, the highest share in the nation. That bleak milestone drove Governor Gavin Newsom to push Care Court, a civil court pathway letting families, cops, or doctors compel people with severe mental illness into treatment plans monitored by judges. By December 2024, all 58 counties were live, and San Diego celebrated the first Care Court graduation. Critics call it coercion in new clothing, but leaders insist chronic street psychosis demands urgent intervention. Meanwhile, the U.S. Supreme Court handed California cities another tool: the Grants Pass versus Johnson decision, which says cities may fine or arrest anyone camping on public land, even if no shelter beds exist. Governor Newsom and big city mayors cheered, promising encampment-free streets. Advocates fired back, warning the ruling simply shuffles tents from sight while clogging jails and emergency rooms. As Care Court tries to treat and new ordinances aim to sweep, one question hangs over the Golden State: will tough love and tougher laws put roofs over heads, or just kick the crisis to the next block? New York offered a very different experiment. New York once bragged about America's strongest right to shelter, but the 2022 migrant wave cracked that safety net. By spring 2025, roughly 45,000 asylum seekers occupied cots alongside longtime New Yorkers, pushing the total nightly shelter census to historic highs. City Hall spent $7 billion in 2 years, spawning what critics dub a shelter industrial complex, where politically connected nonprofits win plush contracts while families languish in hotel rooms. Facing budget free fall, Mayor Eric Adams struck a court deal. Single adult migrants now get only 30 days of guaranteed shelter before facing eviction or relocation, the first major carve-out to the 1981 consent decree. Then, FEMA paused reimbursements after a viral post blasted luxury hotels for migrants, exposing the fragile dance between federal and city dollars. New York's dilemma is stark: uphold a moral promise few other states make, or retrench as the bill skyrockets. Whichever way the city turns, other right-to-shelter jurisdictions are watching, and so are budget hawks across the aisle. In the Sunbelt, the response has been far less charitable. Florida fired the first shot. Governor Ron DeSantis campaigned on turning the Sunshine State into the anti-San Francisco, and in 2024 he signed HB 1365, banning sleeping or camping on any public property. Counties must corral unhoused people into strictly regulated encampments. No drugs, no alcohol, 24-hour security, funded largely with local dollars. Supporters call it compassionate order. Mayors warn of lawsuits and unfunded mandates that siphon money away from housing. Tennessee went further, criminalizing public camping as a Class E felony, punishable by up to 6 years in prison. For 2 years, the law sat dormant. Then, after the Grants Pass ruling, Nashville police began booking unhoused residents downtown. Most charges were later dismissed, but the arrests signaled a new willingness to wield the law. Whether these crackdowns deter encampments or deepen poverty is unproven. What is certain, courts will decide if jail is the next stop for people whose only crime is having nowhere to sleep. Up in the Pacific Northwest, lawmakers chose another battleground: drug policy. 2 years ago, Oregon's Measure 110 made headlines by decriminalizing small-scale drug possession. But fentanyl overdoses soared, downtown Portland emptied out, and public opinion flipped. In March 2024, lawmakers passed HB 4002, rolling back the experiment and restoring misdemeanor possession charges, complete with optional deflection centers in each county. Neighboring Washington took a similar tack a year earlier. Governor Jay Inslee approved a bill reclassifying possession as a gross misdemeanor while pumping millions into treatment diversion. Seattle soon passed its own ban on public drug use. At the same time, at least 5 Washington cities and 2 counties rolled out fresh camping bans, scattering encampments into forests and highway shoulders. Supporters frame these reversals as tough love. Critics call them proof that voters demand visible order faster than governments can build housing. Either way, the Pacific Northwest just became America's largest live experiment in recriminalizing addiction. Amid the chaos, a few quiet success stories broke through. In Texas, a surge of federal housing vouchers let Fort Worth/family homelessness by 33% and trim overall homelessness 12% in just 1 year. The state still struggles with rural encampments, but its numbers defy the national spike. Pennsylvania kept unsheltered homelessness near 12%, one of the nation's lowest shares, by expanding rapid rehousing stipends and embedding social workers in eviction courts. Massachusetts posted similar shelter-first results, with only 7% of its homeless population outdoors, thanks to aggressive motel leasing during COVID that became permanent. These examples share 2 traits: relentless data tracking and a laser focus on permanent housing instead of tent sweeps. They also prove progress is possible, if politics allows. But politics and money have their own gravity. New York City's $7 billion shelter tab laid bare a national tension. As temporary beds multiply, permanent supportive housing lags behind, creating what watchdogs dub the shelter industrial complex. Contractors rake in fees, while tenants wait years for subsidized apartments. The FEMA hotel funding freeze showed how quickly federal dollars can vanish when public opinion shifts, or when a billionaire tweets disapproval. Across the country, mayors complain they fund services the federal government once covered. Governors blame city mismanagement, and voters, stuck with the bill, vote for crackdowns. Until the cost of not housing people outweighs the cost of building housing, the spreadsheet will keep beating the streets. Which brings us to the next 12 months. The White House's All-Inside initiative embedded federal homelessness czars in 6 major regions, promising to cut homelessness 25% by 2025. That deadline is now a single winter away, and the 2025 point-in-time count will test whether enforcement, treatment courts, or housing subsidies moved the dial. Meanwhile, states empowered by the Supreme Court are racing to pass new camping bans. Civil rights groups are racing to sue, and everyday Americans are deciding whether the tent outside their coffee shop is a policy failure or a person in crisis. No matter what side you land on, one fact remains. Every night, America leaves more people outside than any wealthy nation on earth. The record we set in 2023 wasn't a headline, it was a warning. The White House's All Inside initiative embedded federal homelessness czars in 6 major regions, promising to cut homelessness 25% in 2025. That deadline is now here, and the 2025 point-in-time count will test whether enforcement, treatment courts, or housing subsidies move the dial. Meanwhile, states empowered by the Supreme Court are racing to pass new camping bans. Civil rights groups are racing to sue, and everyday Americans are deciding whether the tent outside their coffee shop is a policy failure or a person in crisis. No matter what side you land on, one fact remains. Every night, America leaves more people outside than any wealthy nation on Earth. The record we set in 2023 wasn't a headline. It was a warning. If our metric is fewer tents downtown, new bans might deliver. If it's every person under a roof, the only proven path is permanent housing tethered to treatment and income supports. The next record we break can be the highest number of people rehoused, or the highest number left on the street. The choice and the bill are both already in our hands. What happens next is on all of us.